So today's going to be a little bit of a random video. It is a beautiful day and I want to take advantage of some outdoor time to do some things in the garden. We are going to prune some hydrangeas and some roses. I'm going to show you some perennials that have started to break dormancy. I'm also going to do a little bit of perennial cleanup and I'm going to sow some poppies. So let's go ahead and have a day in the garden. I made a video early spring or end of winter that showed you how to prune paniculata type hydrangeas as well as roses. So if you want to check that out, I'll go ahead and link that video here. But what you want to do when you're cleaning these up is first you want to take off any of last year's blooms. The second thing you want to do is take off any branches that are crossing each other. And the third thing that you want to do is take off any branches that are really skinny and thin, pieces of twigs basically, because these are not going to be large enough to support the weight of these blooms. So you're essentially just cleaning up the structure and making sure that you have nice sturdy stems to hold this year's blooms. And so I'm going to go ahead and get that done now. One more thing to keep in mind when you're pruning your paniculata type hydrangeas is that you don't want to take off more than 1/3 of the shrub at a time. So 1/3 in terms of if you break your shrub up in threes, so the top third you would prune off and prune it right above a set of buds. While I am done pruning these little lime hydrangeas, I also went ahead and pruned my quick fire that is on the opposite side of my shed. And I cleaned up all of these Japanese iris that I have in the back. I took all of the old foliage and the leaves off. And then I also went ahead and cleaned my lamb's ear. There was a bunch of old foliage on top of the plant, and when I started kind of taking off the old foliage, I noticed that all the new growth was already underneath. So this bed is pretty much ready. The last thing I'm going to do in this area here is I'm going to add some fresh compost on top of each of these little lime hydrangeas. Over time, the soil kind of settles and then the root ball sort of becomes exposed. So I'm going to give them a fresh topping of some black cow compost, and then the last step will be to fertilize them. Now I like to use Espoma rose tone fertilizer to fertilize my hydrangeas as well as my roses. I find that it works really well. So that's it, and then this bed will be ready for spring. When you're fertilizing, you want to put a sprinkling of fertilizer on the exterior perimeter of your plant, or what's commonly known as the drip edge. Now, if you're new to gardening and you're not familiar with what a drip edge is, it's essentially the outside of where your plant ends, so the exterior perimeter of your plant. Or in other words, imagine that this had full of leaves and it was dripping. Where do these leaves drip, right? Typically along the outside. So that's where you want to spread your fertilizer. I think that's it for the rose tone. Yep. Well, I'm fresh out of rose tone, so I did intend to do my roses today, but it's gonna have to wait for another day. I'll prune the roses and I'll fertilize them when I pick some more up. That's the thing, small victories, right? As long as I got a little bit of yard work done today, I can say that that was a success. But let me show you a couple of things in this bed that actually are already coming back. This actually stays evergreen. So this here is an Angelina Stonecrop sedum, and I really like the way it looks popping up here and there, so I kind of just leave it. I have some in this area. I also have some growing over the stones on my pavers, and I quite like the way that it looks. So I don't bother pulling it out. I'm using it sort of as a ground cover. In fact, I'm going to take some of those pieces and spread them around the yard even more this spring. Right here I have my Autumn Joy sedum, and they have such cute little rosettes that come up when they start putting out new foliage. I have a clump here, here, and here. And actually I plan on moving these, so I'm going to be transplanting them pretty soon, probably in a few weeks. And all my tulip foliage has already emerged. I'm trying one of these wireless deer fence sticks here, so hopefully the deer will stay away. So that'll be a test because tulips are very tempting to deer. So we shall see how that goes. I came into my shed to grab these baskets, and we're going to put them over some plants. I'm going to show you what's going on and why I'm going to use them. But I overwintered these 2 pots that I had in on my front porch last spring, and I have some Scabiosa butterfly blue in them and some Candy Tuft, which blooms white. And I kept them in the shed to keep them protected over the winter. And look, they actually didn't even miss a beat. So I've been watering them periodically so that they don't dry out too much and risk killing the plants. But they're looking wonderful, nice and green. And so I'm going to start acclimating them over the course of a week or so, and then I'll place them back on the porch. So this is what I do with perennials over winter. I didn't want my pots to crack, and I didn't want them to die in the container. So I kept them in my shed just to be a bit more protected from the elements. And I have this bowl that I created last year that I love. It's got some hens and chicks in them and some more of that sedum Stonecrop Angelina. I have a different type of sedum in here too, Siboldi, that died back a little bit. But I love the way that this looks, and look how nice and bright this Angelina Stonecrop is. Now I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like in the shadier spot. When it gets more sun, it's brighter. And when it gets a bit more shade, it has a different color. So come on and I'll show you. So right here on this crack of my patio, I have some more growing. This tends to be a bit of a shadier area, and here it picks up more of a burgundy color. And in the summer, while it doesn't get quite as bright yellow, it does take on a brighter shade of green. So these baskets here, these are mesh wire baskets that I purchased at the Dollar Tree. And these are great to use as garden cloches. I'm pretty sure I've shown you this if you've watched my videos in the past, but I absolutely love these to protect plants. Now, in this area, I have a couple of heuchera growing. I have the worst luck growing heuchera. It always seems to die off on me or get eaten by something in my garden. They are supposed to be somewhat deer resistant, but I do think that maybe rabbits eat them, and probably even the deer in my garden snack on them. So they are looking terrible. They look worse for the wear at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these wire cloche baskets, and I'm going to place them right on top. And you can secure these with either a rock like I'm doing here, or you can use some landscape staples because they've got these holes in them, so that would work just as well. And what these will do is they will protect these heuchera at least while they're trying to put on some new growth in the spring, so that I can maybe see if I have any chance of them surviving. Here in this bed, I'm going to sow some poppies. I actually sowed some poppies in late winter, very early spring last year, around the first week or second week of March, and I had a lot of success with them. I had sowed the pom-pom purple or pom-pom lilac poppies, and they were absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to repeat the process. I've actually been keeping my poppy seeds in the freezer so that they can go through a period of cold stratification. And so now what I'm going to do is I have raked up the soil. You want to make sure that your poppy seeds make contact with soil and not mulch. So the reason that I raked it up was to get rid of some of the mulch and expose some of the soil. So now that I've turned that up, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle my poppies, make sure that they make contact with the soil, and that's it. You don't want to bury them. You want to just sprinkle them on top of the surface. So this is the variety of the poppies that I'm going to sow. I bought these from Baker Creek last year, and this year I actually collected my own seed. So these are the Poppy Lilac Pom Pom, and this is what they look like. And I'll insert some footage from what they looked like in my garden as well. But they're a beautiful poppy. So I have a good amount of seeds. These were all from the poppies that I had grown. I let them dry out and I collected all of my seed. Now poppy seeds are really, really small. So you want to be careful and not to sow them on a very windy day. These are pretty much like, they look like black pepper. So because they're so light and tiny, it's really difficult to know how many you're scattering. And so just be careful. If you are working on a windy day, you want to wait until the wind kind of stops before you scatter them on the soil. And once you're done sowing your poppy seeds, you want to let the people who live in your household know that they are not to walk on those areas, because you can very easily trample all of your baby seedlings. I've learned this from experience, so take it from me. Don't walk on the beds once you sprinkle your poppy seeds. And here's a little bit of news you can use. Anytime that you're pruning in your garden, anytime you go between plants, you want to go ahead and disinfect your pruners. I carry this little bottle of isopropyl alcohol, and once I'm done pruning one plant, I will go ahead and spray my pruners to disinfect them before I move on to the next plant. This is particularly important with things that you don't want to spread disease. For example, roses. We actually just pruned a couple of branches off of this Japanese maple, so I went ahead and disinfected my pruners, and I thought it would be a good tip to share. Well, let's address the elephant in the room right off the bat here. So this stake that we have with this string going onto our magnolia, this is because all of a sudden the central leader took a hard left and it's starting to turn crooked because we get a lot of wind and the wind tends to blow in this direction. So now we're trying to correct that by every couple of weeks. We're going to slowly start pulling the central leader so that we don't put a lot of pressure on it because we don't want to risk cracking it. But anyway, that's what this is. But here in this bed on the side of my shed, I'm sowing a different variety of poppy. So over by my patio, I sowed the Pom Pom Lilac, and here I'm going to do this new variety this year that I just picked up from Baker Creek, and it's the Sissinghurst White, and it's a beautiful white poppy. So I'm really excited to see how this one turns out. Well, it turned out to be a really productive afternoon in the garden, and now that it's spring, we'll get to spend a lot more time outdoors as a new season is upon us. So thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.